Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm your host, Detective Kevin Schroeder, and I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mamet. Say hello, Ed.
Hello, WABC listeners. Here we are with another interesting guest that I think everybody's going to enjoy. At least I did when I heard about her.
So today's guest is Beth Van Duyne. She's a representative from Texas, the 24th District. She's also a Texas Congresswoman. And today she's our guest on Cop Talk. Welcome, Beth.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for being here. I know you're very busy, and thank you for taking time out to be on Cop Talk today.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up, Beth?
So I grew up in upstate New York. I lived pretty much all upstate. I lived in Albany, Ithaca, Rome, Cooperstown. Beautiful area, but I say maybe a New Yorker by birth, but I'm a Texan by choice.
Okay.
Once I moved to Texas, I could not wait to get back after college. It's a completely different environment in New York than the New York I grew up in.
Yes, for sure. Upstate's beautiful, though. Upstate New York is beautiful where you grew up. You know. Question: you a Texas Ranger fan or New York Ranger fan?
I'm a Texas Ranger fan. Come on.
Well, baseball, hockey, Texas Rangers baseball, and New York Rangers hockey. You know. So
we got the Stars. We got the Stars in Dallas. So
next
even
question,
on the hockey side.
So the next question you already answered. What do you like better, New York or Texas?
Texas, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
The New York Falls are beautiful, but
yes,
Texas
it is
throughout the year and the people. Yeah.
So if you could just tell us a little about everyone about your district in Texas.
So if you've ever flown into the Dallas area, the Dallas-Fort Worth is pretty much in the center of the district. So it includes areas of Dallas. It includes areas of Fort Worth. It is a primarily suburban district, very demographically similar. But we also have I'm trying to think, the most diverse zip code in the country. So we've got people from all around the world that live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I think we had 40 something languages when I was mayor of the city of Irving. We had 40 something languages that were spoken in our schools. So it's a very diverse population. But at the same token, it's a great, I think, cross section of America.
Oh, it sure is. And by the way, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, so I've been out to Dallas many times. Oh,
good for you.
Go
good
Cowboys, Captain.
How about the crime in your area, if there is any?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are a border state. And so what we've seen is, the vast majority of folks who are coming in through the country, I think Texas is disproportionately taking those. We've had the 10 million, 11 million illegal immigrants who've come into our country in the last 3.5 years. Over 4 million have crossed into Texas. 60% of the known gotaways have been in Texas. So, our crime is harsh right now when we're looking at sex trafficking, when we're looking at cartel violence, when we're looking at drugs, specifically fentanyl. I have law enforcement roundtables within my district. I meet with our chiefs of police. I meet with our sheriffs, and they'll tell me that they've seen increases in those types of crimes recently. So I take that seriously and try to figure out what the best way is to handle it. We have a job fair in North Texas. Last year, we had over 16,000 people who came. And one of the biggest jobs that we're hiring was we had an entire row for law enforcement agencies. And it's really hard right now when they've been demonized across the country, when you've got city councils and mayors who have basically tried to defund them. That it's hard to keep folks who want to do their job in that job and get new people in there. I can't tell you how many police officers I'm friends with that I've known over the years, and they were police officers because their dad was a police officer, and they're like, my kids don't want to do it. So we're trying to do everything that we can, I think, to support, to prop up, and to encourage people to get into that line of work, including going to New York City and saying, hey, New York's finest, if you don't feel like you're being treated well in your city, come to North Texas. We actually appreciate our law enforcement officers.
Well, regarding that, last week, so you ran an ad in the New York Post that drew a lot of attention. And then you were on the WABC Katz and Cosby show, and that's how I heard about you. What prompted you to put that ad in the Post?
I think seeing the images over and over again of what's happening to New York City police officers, how they're getting beat in the street by people who are here illegally. And it just seems like the elected officials aren't doing anything to even enforce the laws, much less allow the officers to do their job. And as a result, these people, these officers are getting beat down. The very next day, their assailants are being let go, sometimes without cash bail, sometimes without even knowing who they are because they're in this country illegally. And then you start listening to the way that the council members, the mayor, the governors, the DAs are talking about them, and it's heartbreaking. And when you saw what happened with Jonathan Diller's funeral, and the fact that you've got, again, elected officials who kind of strong-arm their way in there for a photo op, not caring about his family, not being respectful about what has happened that day, and not acknowledging their guilt in how that came about. The fact that they wanted to be a sanctuary city, those are the policies they had. They talked about defunding the officers, and yet they're there for a photo op. It really angered me. I was heartbroken about it. And I thought, you know what? You're going to put your life on the line. You're going to have people that that claim to represent you that really don't care, that are willing to throw you under the bus. You've got a choice. You don't have to stay in New York. When I was mayor, when I was on city council, it was amazing the relationship that our citizens had with our police officers. They were beloved. They were respected. They were appreciated. And they saw that kind of support from the city council and from the mayor. And my point to, the brave men in blue in New York is, if you want to have that kind of lifestyle, it does still exist. Maybe not where you are, but come to North Texas, where we are hiring. We're the fastest growing state in the country for a reason. People want to live there. They recognize that we want our laws enforced because we want to live in a safe community. And that was really what prompted it.
During your WABC interview, you used the term anarchistic politicians.
Anarchists, yeah.
Right.
And they'll just burn it down. They don't care. They don't care who they're harming. They don't care what they're doing, but they will burn it down. And that's exactly how I feel. I mean, the officers there who are doing their job, who are putting their lives on the line, are not getting the support they need. And the politicians just don't seem to care.
Well, you also mentioned the elected politicians and the district attorneys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a district attorney has the ability to be able to enforce the law, has the ability to be able to throw the book at criminals who are arrested, who have actually done harm to citizens. And instead, they give every excuse in the book. It seems like they're protecting the criminals over the citizens, and they're definitely protecting the criminals over the police officers.
Well, we have a similar problem here. In fact, New York City is kind of unique. I'm sure you're aware of this, being a New York State resident. We have 5 different district attorneys for one city, which is, I don't think anyone else in the United States has such a setup. And they all have their own agendas because the city is comprised of 5 counties. Of the 62 counties in New York State, New York City takes up 5. And this is a problem because they all have their own interests. And I'd say about more than half are following the example of D.A. Bragg, who was a disaster here. He on day one, he put out this manifesto of what they were not going to enforce, which was just about everything. Are you familiar with that one?
I am. And we're trying to figure out from a legislative perspective, what's the fix for it? You want to allow some kind of prosecutorial discretion, right? That's necessary. But at the same token, when you've got these DAs who are coming down and saying, we're not enforcing the law. The law is only as important and only as strong as the ability to be able to enforce it coming from the courts and coming from the DAs. And if they're not willing to do that, what's the point? And what we're seeing in New York over and over again. By the way, it's not just in New York. We had a DA in Dallas who did the same thing. And that was very frustrating. He said, people who steal up to $700 a day from some of these retail places, we're not going to enforce the law. And guess what? It encouraged people to steal more. I mean, that's what happens when there are no consequences.
Well, there's a conflict between what they're doing and what their oath of office is. Their oath of office requires they enforce all laws. And yet, because of the discretion that
New York citizens keep hiring, they keep voting for them, At some point in time, it's like, okay, why do you keep voting for these people?
And you also mentioned the cashless bail during your interview.
Hey, it's the Good Greek Spiro, and I have some exciting news. Good Greek has been awarded National Mover of the Year. You've trusted the Good Greek for decades with your family's moving and storage needs. Now Good Greek is proud to be the nation's top mover. So when it's time for you to move across town or across the country, trust America's best mover, Good Greek. Go to goodgreek.com for Good Greek, the National Mover of the Year.
Good Greek Moving and Storage, your superhero movers.
Do you have such a problem in Texas?
Yeah. Not in most places. In most places, we don't have that. Now, look, in any big urban area that you've got, whether it's Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, you're going to see crime on increase, and you're going to see more liberal DAs, more liberal mayors. But in the majority of the state, that's not what we see. But yeah, cashless bail is a problem. There has to be a deterrent not to commit crime. And when you know that you can commit a crime, you're going to be released the next day, cashless bail. Probably not anything's going to happen to you. It encourages criminals and empowers criminals and emboldens criminals. And that's exactly what we're seeing in New York and in other areas across the country. And by the way, if this ad works in New York, expect us to also go to places like LA and Chicago and see if we can get those good officers down to Texas as well.
You know, a funny thing that occurred during the interview with you was Tony Carbonetti said to you, why don't you send all the elected officials up to New York and we'll send you ours. And,
no.
and you said, no, we have to change the electorate's minds over here. I thought that was cute.
You know, you represent the area that you're in. And when these folks continue to get reelected, at some point in time, you got to ask your fellow voters up in New York, what are you thinking? You know, you can't go to a store without risk of being robbed or having that store be robbed. When you got innocent women who are walking the streets who are getting punched in the face, when you got people who are in the subway who are getting thrown on the tracks, at some point in time, you've got to ask yourself, why does this keep happening? And why do they allow it? When you have to get the National Guard in there to be able to guard what's happening in the subways, and then that's still not working. Right. There's a problem with crime in New York. And I know the mayor was upset that I put this ad in. You know, he started talking about crime in Dallas. What he didn't talk about was the 5,400 assaults on officers in New York that have happened as a direct result of their policies.
Well, leading
it's
into
accepting
that,
of the criminals.
Leading into that statement of yours, how have New York City cops responded to your ad, if any?
I've been talking to our police chiefs because the links that I gave them was not to my office, but was to directly to the police departments that were in the district that are hiring. So I've asked the police chiefs to follow up with me and let me know, how many people that call and have an interest. And we probably be hearing from them this week, but I'll definitely let you know. I would hope it's a lot. I would hope that the interest is high, recognizing the fact that we've got, a much better quality of life for, a lot cheaper. The price tag to live in Texas is a lot cheaper than living in New York City. And again, I think that the quality of life is a lot higher.
So New York City Mayor Eric Adams says you should focus basically on crime in your own area. How do you respond to that?
Yeah. Well, I think the crime is one thing, but what he's talking about, we're not talking about crime. We're saying we want to hire police. We're saying we want to have our laws enforced, that we revere, that we appreciate, that we respect our police. What I'm talking about is how they treat their officers and why they would want to leave. Notice he didn't address that. Again, he didn't talk about the 5,400 assaults that they've had on New York PD in the last year alone. They're not talking about the number of people that they're releasing back into the system, the recidivism rates that they're seeing. He doesn't want to talk about that. And the fact is, if you're going to treat your officers like you've treated them, expect them to leave. And if that's a conversation he wants to have, I'm welcome to have it with him. I can tell him now Irving wasn't nearly as big as New York City, but it was 92nd largest city in the country, very diverse population. And I can tell you exactly what we did to be able to keep our officers and recruit more. And that's a conversation he wants to have. Give me a call.
You've said Texas is a state that respects their police officers. Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So a good example is when I was mayor, we had a very strong relationship with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. What we found was that when we had criminal illegal aliens in our city that was arrested, our police officers detained them. They called up Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. If they were found to be in our country illegally, they were deported by ICE. And we got a lot of negativity from places like New York, as you can imagine. New York Times wrote articles about it, Chicago, LA Times. And we were threatened that we were going to be, businesses were going to leave, people weren't going to move to our community. We were called racist. We supported our police in that effort. And what we found was we became the 5th safest city in the country. We supported our officers. We didn't throw them under the bus. We didn't call them racist. And what we also found was we were protecting everybody who lived in the city. Because what a lot of these people who throw out names don't seem to realize is that when you are protecting and enforcing your laws, people who are most often harmed by these policies are other people who are there illegally that don't feel comfortable calling the police. So we actually made everybody feel safer. More businesses came in, and we became one of the fastest growing areas in the country. That was for a reason. But again, it was by encouraging our police officers to do their job and supporting them when they did
it. If the New York cops respond to your ad and they want to do you have any specific policies to help them settle in?
Well, actually, I mean, they're talking about, it depends on what department they go to work for, but Dallas is doing a huge effort to try to recruit. In fact, they're having lateral transfers. The benefits are fantastic and very competitive salaries. Again, it's a much a cheaper cost of living down here, much higher quality of life. Some schools, we've got great education down here, very complimentary housing. So yeah, they can reach out to all those departments. We included over a dozen links to departments that are hiring. And again, I mean, these are lateral transfers where you're not going to lose your seniority or benefits.
How about your rank? Can I go back as a captain?
Again, it's going to be dependent on each department and how they handle it.
Beth, I have a question. Do you have an age limit with the police department in Dallas?
Again, it's going to be each department. It's going to be slightly different.
Okay.
We included links for more than 12 different departments that we're hiring.
Okay. In New York City, it's age 63 is when you have to retire at age 63. And I believe you have to be 21 to come on the job.
Oh, yeah. But if you're a veteran, you get additional time for each time.
I believe at the end.
The end, right.
The end, yes.
I think it can go up to 29.
Right. Yep.
I have an idea. Why don't you send us the Texas Rangers and we'll send you our cops?
You can't get our Rangers? Are you kidding me? No. But you can't really complain. I mean, the Yankees are not doing too bad either, right?
No. Yankees they should have a good season, I should say. And the Rangers, the New York Rangers are going to make the playoffs. I hope they go far, and I hope they win the Stanley Cup this year. That's beside the point. But I am a Cowboy fan.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that you're a Cowboy fan.
I am.
So we got to get you on the Texas Rangers. We got to get you to be a Dallas Stars fan, and then we're good.
That sounds, yeah. Well, I've been to Dallas. I'm a big hockey guy. So we've been to, and actually my son plays for the NYPD hockey team. But I've been to Dallas Stars game out in, of course, Dallas. We go to a lot of different stadiums, arenas to see different hockey games, But years ago, back in the late 80s, early 90s, before your time, my old precinct, Midtown North Precinct, we used to run a Dallas Cowboy Giants weekend. And I think there was only 3 of us that were Cowboy fans, and about 50 guys were, Giant fans that we'd go out there. But the cops out there were great to us, going back in the late 80s, early 90s. The residents, the community, everybody was great. They treat us really well there.
How did you become a Cowboys fan growing up in New York?
Back in the late 70s, mid 70s, I put on the television. It was a Giant game on a Sunday afternoon, and they were playing the Cowboys. And I like their uniforms. I like the cheerleaders, and I became a Cowboy fan. I get it. But then now I get it. And my children are all Cowboy fans as well, so it's good. It's all good. But no,
Roger Staubach for me.
That was exactly Roger Staubach. Yes, Bob Hayes. Yep, back in the day. Yep, of course, Emmett Smith. But yeah, it's good football out there. It's a great. Yeah. Dallas is a great city. Texas is a great state. But I'm sorry, Cap.
One final question from me. We mentioned before the DAs. What would you do, or what can be done to neutralize these Soros DAs around the country? Because it's not just New York with Bragg, but they're all over the place. Yeah. And I think that the public has to be educated, about what's going on. But from a political standpoint of view, what do you think can be done as a member of Congress? Yeah,
well, we keep going back and forth on this, quite honestly. You've got to recognize and respect the difference between the federal position on what the states can do. And you have to have prosecutorial discretion. You have to allow that, recognizing the fact that these are elected officials. I mean, they all represent a different constituency. But at the same time, when they're not enforcing the laws, are they getting federal grant dollars that potentially, look, if you're not going to enforce the law, you're not going to do your job, you're not going to have access to these federal grant dollars. But I always urge caution when we start thinking about the federal fix for it, because while that's the fix that we're trying to solve, in this particular case, once you open that Pandora's box, keep in mind, we've got a 1-member majority in the House right now. So the Senate is run primarily by Democrats, majority of Democrats. The presidency right now is a Democrat. If we lose one more member in Congress, we go into the minority. And if you're opening up that where you're going to have federal law enforcement agencies coming in and telling local agencies how they're going to run their courts, be careful what you ask for. So we're going back and forth on it, but we do need, it is something that you need to be very, very sensitive to, where it's overstepping federal authorities and local law enforcement.
Well, you hit upon a very important point that I've brought up in the past, is the funding, the federal funding that goes to many of these localities, particularly those that are sanctuary cities like New York. New York has received a lot of money for the police and around the country.
Yeah.
That is a very strong tool that you have. I would think there would be no violation of any conflict between state law and federal law. If they're taking federal money, I believe there's an obligation that they do what they're supposed to do to get that money.
I agree with you 100%. But what ends up happening is I've seen my first 2 years in Congress when we were in the minority, I saw a number of bills coming through from our Democrat colleagues that were enforcing DEI requirements as part of these grant dollars. So you're not hiring police officers based on their merits, based on their experience, based on their ability to do the job. You're hiring them based on their gender and on their color. I think that's a problem. So it could go both ways. So once, and I warn my sheriffs, I warn my police chiefs. Like, every single time you ask $1 in federal money from the federal government, keep in mind there will always be ties attached. You're always giving up a little bit of your sovereignty when you start taking federal dollars, and expect the more you take, the less control you're going to have over your officers, and the more you're kind of feeding into the federal system and what they want you to be doing. And I don't want anybody in D.C. telling my Texas officers how to behave and what they should be working on. I think our priorities are a lot more in line with our values in Texas than anybody in D.C.
You're absolutely correct.
How's the migrant situation?
Well, as I said at the top of the program, it's rough right now. We've seen the majority of gotaways, 60%, that have come through Texas. Texas obviously taking its undue brunt. With 40% of the folks who've crossed illegally into the country in the last 3.5 years, again coming through Texas, over 4 million. You've got Abbott, who's down at the border right now trying to do his damnedest to enforce our laws. And you've got the administration who's suing him over it. They're going back as soon as they start putting up some of the razor wire to form a barrier. You got the federal government now coming in and cutting it down. But what I think Abbott did do is he completely embarrassed the administration, because as soon as he started to enforce, the barriers and push people back, they stopped coming. I mean, shocking. When you actually have a deterrent and you're not welcoming them in, they were starting to go to other places. So you saw more people entering in California. You saw more people entering in New Mexico than you did in Texas, where Texas had been, almost ground zero at that point for illegal immigration. So, we're having a problem with it. And we've seen 1,000% uptick in drug-related seizures in the last 2 years alone. If you start talking to some of our sheriffs, triple-digit increases in deaths as a result of fentanyl poisoning. This is what's happening in Texas. It's happening across the country.
Is Eagle Pass in your district?
No, Eagle Pass is down right on the border. My district is in North Texas. But again, we're seeing a tremendous amount increase in drugs, in sex trafficking, in human trafficking that's coming all throughout our country, but specifically in Texas.
Yep. Last word.
Well, I think this was a great interview. I'm glad I listened to your interview last week, because had I missed it.
Me too.
Well, actually, it was in the post, so I would have seen it either way. And I said to my partner here, our host, Kevin, I think that this lady would be a great interview, and you have been a great interview. And I believe you're up for re-election coming November, and we'll do whatever we can to support you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And if anytime you guys want to talk about my experiences with police, or talk about some of the issues that you're having, or what you think we should be doing in DC, invite me back on. Love to have those conversations.
Well, that'll be great.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, representative from Texas. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know you're very busy, so we'll let you get back to work. Thanks again. Be safe out there. And right now, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. You could also follow us on Twitter, at Cop WABC, at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, be safe out there. God bless you, and God bless America.
And all police, law enforcement agencies, all police and law enforcement agencies in the United States and around the world.